Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Prabhuji, I am requesting you to please take over the call and provide the nectar of today's topic to all of us. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Amit Prabhu. We'll start with the Mangala Charan and then get to the class. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamsha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Pashyatya Deshatarine. Yeah. It's actually a difficult act to follow because Maharaj gave the first class and then he gave the overview of the entire NOI. And for those who know Maharaj, Nectar of Instruction has been his life and soul for the last 40-45 years of his practice of his practice of bhakti. So he's really an expert at it, but it's just Hari Leela Prabhu and Maharaj's encouragement that I am presenting this. So please view it from that perspective. If you have attended the first class, actually. Let me share my screen. Can you see my screen now?
Prabhuji, screen is visible, but yeah, I think your desktop is only showing up.
Yeah, it's coming up.
Yeah, it is there now.
Okay, so this is the Nectar of Instruction, and we are going to start with text 1 today. Maharaj last week gave the overview and also covered a little bit of the preface from the Nectar of Instruction. So the preface is quite short in Nectar of Instruction, and a preface of a book usually deals with 3 broad things. 1 is what is the qualifications of the author, 2 is in what circumstances the book was written, and 3, what are the qualifications expected in an audience the book is written for, whom the book is actually written for. And Nectar of Instruction is Srila Prabhupada's translation and commentary of Srila Rupa Goswami's Upadeshamrita. And in the preface, Srila Prabhupada describes about Rupa Goswami, how he is the foremost of the disciples of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and we are all followers of Srila Rupa Goswami. And he also goes on to mention about the qualifications of the audience of the book. The qualifications of the audience of the book is he mentions the other books that Srila Rupa Goswami has written, like Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Lalita Madhava, Vidagdha Madhava, and so on. But Srila Prabhupada says the Nectar of Instruction is the first instructions for a neophyte devotee. But it's quite intense in the sense that within 11 verses, Rupa Goswami takes the neophyte devotee all the way to Radha Kund, if he can follow his instructions perfectly. And right in the first verse, you can see that Rupa Goswami doesn't really have much time, because he only has 11 verses to cover the entire essence of all instructions. Rupa Goswami directly talks about who can become a spiritual master. And before we get to text 1, I would like to give a brief overview of NOI itself. So NOI, like we discussed, has 11 verses, Upadeshamrita. And then of that, the first 7 verses talk about Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. Text 8 talks about Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti, and text 9 through 11 speak about Bhava Bhakti and Prema Bhakti. So we'll start off with text 1. But before going there, I wanted to bring this song up that Maharaj discussed in the previous week. This is a song called Ohe Vaishnav Thakur by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And you can see this is a very famous song. And the second paragraph here says, Chaya begodomi, chaya dosha shodhi, chaya guna deho dashe, chaya shata shanga deho he amare, poshechi shangerashe. So this is essentially talking about the first 4 verses of the Nectar of Instruction. This song is based on the Nectar of Instruction. Chaya Begodami is the 6 types of urges that Rupa Goswami will talk about in text 1 that we want to control. And then the 6 kinds of things that will help bhakti, and the 6 kinds of things that will destroy bhakti. And then he talks about Chaya Shat Sangha, the 6 kinds of association that he would like in the song. So I thought this is a very nice song to bring up that talks about Nectar of Instruction that Maharaj also spoke about. And the connection between text 1 and the preface itself is the preface in Nectar of Instruction is not just a preface. It also has introduction in it. It introduces the book a little bit. And Srila Prabhupada says in the preface that in all spiritual affairs, one's duty is to control the mind and senses. Irrespective of which spiritual paths that we follow, without the control of the mind and senses, you cannot actually make any advancement, leave alone bhakti. So that is the connection. And here Prabhupada goes on to say that everybody who is practicing Krishna consciousness should first become a Goswami and then become a pure devotee from there on. And Swami, like we all know, means the master, and Go means the senses. And Goswami is somebody who is actually who controlled all his senses, or is the master of his senses, right? So which takes us to text 1 of today. Vacho vegam manasa krodha vegam jihva vegam udaro pasta vegam etan veganyo vishaheta dhira sarvam api mam prithvim sasishyat. As you can see, the Nectar of Instruction is poetically very brilliant also. Text 1 starts off with a meter called Trishtub, which has about 11 syllables in each line. And although the Nectar of Instruction is just 11 verses, it has 5 meters in it. Rupa Goswami uses his meters exquisitely in the Nectar of Instruction. The first verse starts with Trishtub, which we've also seen in the Bhagavad Gita, with the famous verse, Karpanya dosho pahata svabhava prichami tvam dharma samudha cheta. So that was, and this verse have the same meter. Text 2, 3, and 4, we'll see, will have the Anushtub meter, which is the most common meter that's used across all of our scriptures. And then 5 through 8 uses the meter Vasanta Tilaka, which is basically the meter that we use for our Brahma Samhita. Chintamani Prakara Sadma Shukalpa Vriksha, that meter. And then text 9 and 10 have a very, very long meter called Shardula Vikritidam, which is the first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, right? Janmadhyasya yatonvayaditaratas charteshva bhignya swarar. So we see that the Nectar of Instruction will start becoming bigger and bigger and bigger in terms of its meter. as we progress. And the final verse is a very, very sweet meter also called Mandakranta, which is the famous verse that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Naham Vipro Nacha Narapatir Napi Vaishyo Nashudro. So the last verse of Nectar of Instruction will basically have that meter. So like you can see, just like how Srimad Bhagavatam in its 18,000 verses has exquisite meters, Nectar of Instruction also has many, many wonderful meters, although it has just 11 verses. So it's poetically beautiful also, apart from the substance that Rupa Goswami is giving us in these 11 verses. So Srila Prabhupada's translation: a sober person who can control the urge to speak, the mind's demands, the actions of anger, and the urges of the tongue, belly, and genitals is qualified to make disciples all over the world. So here Rupa Goswami is talking about 6 different kinds of urges that arise from our senses that we are expected to control, right? Vegam here we can see is repeated constantly. Vacho Vegam, Manasa Krodha Vegam, Jihva Vegam. So the word Vegam is basically the urge. And then the word in front of it qualifies what kind of urge it is. Vacho Vegam is the urge to speak. Manasa Krodha Vegam is the urges of the mind and anger. Jihva Vegam is the urges of the tongue. Udara Vegam and Upastha Vegam. So Udara we all know from the word Dhamodara, right? Udara means belly. And the urges of the belly, and Upastha is the urges of the genitals. So Etan Vegan Yo Vishahetadira, for somebody who's actually controlled all of these urges, then Sarvam Api Mam Pratyum Sisha. Such a person can actually make disciples all over the world. So before we get into the purport, if you read the purports for Nectar of Instruction, you will keep encountering this word Anuvritti in his Anuvritti commentary. So Srila Prabhupada, this is how he goes about writing his purports for Nectar of Instruction, is that he'll give his purport or his commentary on the verse, and then the second half of his commentary is always the commentary of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's commentary on the Nectar of Instruction was named Anuvritti. One of the first acharyas in our parampara, at least, who started writing a commentary on the Nectar of Instruction was Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur. He started his commentary called the Piyusha Varshini Vritti. And unfortunately, Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur could not really complete his commentary to the Nectar of Instruction. And he also wrote essays on text 2 and 3 called Bhaktya Loka, very wonderful essays on the 6 qualities that can destroy Bhakti and the 6 qualities that can help Bhakti flourish. But he called his son, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and then asked him to complete the commentary to the Nectar of Instruction. And Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur writes his commentary in the name Anuvritti, to follow. Anu means to follow, right? He's following in the footsteps of his father Bhakti Vinod Thakur and our Acharya. So what I thought today was I would go through Srila Prabhupada's commentary for the NOI, and next week Maharaj can pick up Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati's commentary, Anuvritti, and then complete text 1 next week. So Prabhupada starts the commentary with something that's really amazing. Most of the commentators would probably deal with tackling on how to control these urges, right? But Prabhupada starts off with atonement. How does atonement even make sense? Why does Prabhupada start with defining what atonement is? And he starts off by this conversation, by quoting this conversation between Maharaj Parikshit and Shukadeva Goswami. This is from the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the 1st chapter. The context before this is that in the 5th canto, last chapter, Shukadeva Goswami basically describes all the hellish planets, the different hellish planets that we have. And then in the beginning of the 6th canto, the 1st chapter, Maharaj Parikshit poses these 2 questions to Shukadeva Goswami. This is Canto 6, Chapter 1, Text 9 and 10. So these are the 2 questions that Maharaj Parikshit poses to Shukadev Goswami. Maharaj Parikshit says, one may know that sinful activity is injurious for him because he actually sees that a criminal is punished by the government and rebuked by people in general, and because he hears from scriptures and learned scholars that one is thrown into hellish conditions in the next life for committing sinful acts. Nevertheless, in spite of such knowledge, one is forced to commit sins again and again, even after performing acts of atonement. Therefore, what is the value of such atonement? So we can see that Shukdev Goswami has described the different hellish planetary systems. And the idea is if you commit sinful activities, you're going to be put into hellish planetary systems as a method of atonement for what you've done, right? But we see Parikshit Maharaj says, even after atoning for your sins, so-called atonement of your sins, the person still commits the same sins again. So what is the use of such an atonement is Maharaj Parikshit's question. And he continues, sometimes one who is very alert so as not to commit sinful acts is victimized by sinful life again. Even if you're alert, he says. I therefore consider this process of repeated sinning and atoning to be useless. It is like the bathing of an elephant, for an elephant cleanses itself by taking a full bath, but then throws dust over its head and body as soon as it returns to the land. Right? So this is basically the picture that Parikshit Maharaj is giving us. Like atonement is like the bathing of the elephant. We try to cleanse ourselves of all the sins that we have committed, but then we come out and do the same thing again, like the elephant putting its dust all over its body after it has taken its bath. So Srila Prabhupada also gives his explanation for these two questions that Maharaj Parikshit poses and gives some real world examples, right? So he talks about a professional thief, right? So the thief knows that if he's caught committing the act, he'll be put in a jail, right? This is basically what our secular world does. If you do something wrong that is against the law, you will be caught and put in jail. But a professional thief doesn't stop there, right? Although he knows he'll be put in jail, he still commits theft. And when he's caught and put in jail, he's really, the idea is he'll transform. He'll have some time to think about it, the mistake that he committed. And when he comes out, he'll come out as a changed person. That's the idea of at least jails. But we see that the thief comes out and still commits the crime. He'll still go and steal something from people, right? And Prabhupada gives the other example of the devotees on how the devotees chant the Mahamantra but still commit sinful activities because they think that chanting the Mahamantra will cleanse them of all the sins. And we know that this is an offense against the holy name, right? This is the seventh offense, and Prabhupada in many places says this is the most offensive of all the offenses, to commit sinful activities on the strength of chanting the holy names of the Lord. And the Christians also do the same, right? They go to the church every Sunday and they ask for confession. They go and confess their sins in front of the pastor there. But then they continue their lives, their same sinful lives, when they come out of the church. So what is the purpose of these atonements, right? These atonements should actually change a person. But instead, we see that the person doesn't really change, although he atones for the mistakes that the person is committing. And Shukadev Goswami basically recognizes that this is such a wonderful question by Maharaj Parikshit, right? And Prabhupada talks about the three different classes of intelligent people that are there in the world, right? So the first class intelligence is that they hear from the Shastra or they read from the books that, hey, you should not really steal or you should not really commit sinful activities, and then they refrain from thieving. But still, this is not really going to help. That's Prabhupada's point. And then a less intelligent person may first commit the sin, right? And then says, oh, I've actually gone through the consequences of my action, so I better not do it again. But the third class intelligent person, who basically is not very intelligent, is that although he knows he should not do it, although he has suffered the consequences of such an action, still goes ahead and commits the activity, commits the sinful activity. So Parikshit Maharaj basically says, I don't really see the point of atoning. So what is why are we even doing it? So then Shukdev Goswami agrees to his point. And then this is Shukdev Goswami's reply. This is 6.1.11, right? Shukdev Goswami says, "My dear king, since acts meant to neutralize impious actions are also fruitive, they will not release one from the tendency to act fruitively." This is the problem, right? Why are you atoning? So that you can go and do something that's fruitive, meaning you can do activities for your own sense gratification. That is the problem, right? Persons who subject themselves to the rules and regulations of atonement are not at all intelligent. Indeed, they are in the mode of darkness. Unless one is freed from the mode of ignorance, trying to counteract one action through another is useless, because this will not uproot one's desires. This is the key point, right? The idea that atonement will help is completely defeated here by Shukadev Goswami, because that really doesn't get to the root cause of the issues. The root cause of the issues here is our desires. Our desires to gratify our own senses. That is the root cause of everything, right? That is why, although we atone, the root cause is still not destroyed. The desire for sense gratification is still there. Therefore, we go and start performing the same actions again. Thus, even though one may superficially seem pious, he will undoubtedly be prone to act impiously. Therefore, real atonement is enlightenment in perfect knowledge, Vedanta, by which one understands the supreme absolute truth, right? So, from atonement, Shukadev Goswami goes a little bit further and basically says, karma is useless because it doesn't really remove the tendency for sense gratification. So he moves one step above and says, oh, therefore you need knowledge, not just activity just by itself is not sufficient. You really need to know why you're doing it, right? And this is a good parallel with the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu also, which is like the big brother book of the Nectar of Instruction. In that, Rupa Goswami also starts with this cycle of avidya, right? This is the cause of all the problems that we have, or avidya or ignorance, which is basically what Shukadev Goswami is saying here also. The cycle basically is you're ignorant, you don't really know what to do, therefore you start doing things that are not conducive for you, that are not good for you. And this results in this cycle of Kuta, Bija, Aprarabdha and Prarabdha Karma, right? And you're continuously cycling through this cycle of and completely bound. Kuta basically means your tendency to commit sinful activities. Since you have the tendency to commit sinful activities, you go and commit sinful activities. That in turn gets you a seed, basically bija, that slowly starts fructifying, which is in the unfructified stage, it's aprarabdha. And then in the fructified stage, it's prarabdha karma. At that point, you really need to go through the reactions of your action that you've committed. And this is a vicious cycle, because doing this again causes tendency to commit sinful activities, and then we go through this constant cycle. So Shukadev Goswami is saying, okay, knowledge, you really need knowledge to get out of this cycle, so that you really can know why you're doing what you're doing. But Parikshit Maharaj is still not convinced by this answer that Shukadev Goswami gives. So then Shukadev Goswami moves on in the next verse and says, to concentrate the mind, one must observe a life of celibacy. So this is jnana, right? So once we know that this is what I need to do, then I can start following all these steps. A life of celibacy, not fall down. One must undergo austerity of voluntarily giving up sense enjoyment. One must then control the mind and senses, give charity, be truthful, clean and non-violent, follow the regulated principles and chant the holy names of the Lord. Thus, a sober, faithful person who knows the religious principles is temporarily purified of all sins performed with his body, words and mind. This is the key, right? A sober, faithful person who knows the religious principles, basically on the platform of jnana, is still not completely purified. He says is temporarily purified of all the sins. Why? Because these sins are like the dried leaves of creepers beneath a bamboo tree, which may be burned by fire, although their roots remain to grow again at the first opportunity. So this is the problem, that even though we have knowledge, we still have not attacked the root cause of the problem. It still does not completely take away the root cause of all the problems. It does burn the surface, like he says, it's like the dried leaves, but the root of the bamboo tree is still there. And therefore, Shukadev Goswami gives us how we should actually go about doing our activities, right? He says only a rare person who has adopted complete unalloyed devotional service to Krishna can uproot the weeds of sinful action with no possibility that they will revive. This is what bhakti does to us, right? When we are acting in devotional service, what bhakti does, it starts acting at the root of the issue. He can do this simply by discharging devotional service, thus as the sun can immediately dissipate fog by its rays. Finally, they agree that atonement is basically useless. So in order for us to control our senses, the only way that by which we can control our senses is by practicing devotional service, because the other processes of controlling our senses really don't get to the root cause of the issue. And we will see this in the nectar of instruction, text 7, right? Rupa Goswami will say, Srinath Krishna nama charitadi sitapiya vidya pitto patapta rasanasya narochikanu kim twadvarad anudinau kalu saiva jastha swadvikramad bhavati tadgatam mulahantri. Mulahantri, he says, that Sat Krishna nama charitadi sitapi avidya, that we have this avidya or ignorance, and he compares that to jaundice, right? The cure for jaundice is that is sugar candy. But when we have jaundice, the sugar candy doesn't really taste so sweet. It tastes very bitter, but that's still the medicine. So we keep taking it. So like that, he says in our disease condition, the nama rupa charita, or the names, forms, and glories of Krishna doesn't really taste so sweet in the beginning. But when we keep chanting the names of the Lord, hearing about the names of the Lord, and seeing the different forms of the Lord, and worshipping the different forms of the Lord, then our disease condition slowly starts fading away. And what this does is tadgata mulahantri. It attacks the disease not with its symptoms, but at the root cause of what this issue is. So therefore, this is basically going to be the theme of Srila Prabhupada's prescription for how to control the different urges that Rupa Goswami has mentioned in text 1. So Prabhupada basically writes in his purport that a sinful activity cannot be counteracted by a pious activity, right? This is basically what atonement is. I've committed a sinful activity, therefore let me do a pious activity to counteract the sinful activity. So therefore, the real prashchitta or real atonement is reawakening our dormant Krishna consciousness. This is basically what it is. And Srila Prabhupada gives an example of what Shukadeva Goswami spoke about in the previous verse, of the gradual way in which you can go about and how the Ashtanga yogis do, right? They start controlling their senses, then they have their body first, then their prana, their breathing, and then they slowly start going through these 8 stages. And it's a very difficult process. But Prabhupada writes, if one is fortunate to get the association of a pure devotee, right, he can surpass all these practices of controlling the mind by mystic yoga, which Shukadeva Goswami said in the previous text also. And how can we do that? By simply following the regulative principles and chanting the holy names of the Lord under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, right? And Prabhupada continues to say, this is the easy process being recommended by Srila Rupa Goswami, right? There are various processes and methods in which we can go ahead and try to control the different urges. But Prabhupada says the most easiest process, and the process that is being recommended by Srila Rupa Goswami on how to control this, because Rupa Goswami doesn't directly say that in text 1. He just says, you just need to control these urges, and one who has controlled these urges can become a spiritual master. But Prabhupada gives us the insight on what Rupa Goswami is trying to say is the method to control all these urges that he's just described. So now we'll look at the various urges that and what Srila Prabhupada says about those urges, right? So the first one is Vacho Vegam, or the urge to speak. Srila Prabhupada says, controlling speech, however, does not mean self-imposed silence, the external process of mauna, as Mayavadi philosophers think. Silence may appear helpful for some time, but ultimately it proves a failure. The meaning of a controlled speech conveyed by Srila Rupa Goswami advocates the positive process of Krishna Katha, engaging the speaking process in glorifying the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. Right? So the first urge that Rupa Goswami is asking us to control is the urge to speak. So the natural tendency for us would be to start thinking that, oh, if I have the urge to speak, I should just not speak. So that could try to control that way. I can control the urge. But what Srila Prabhupada is saying here is that's not the way you can control your urge to speak, because it's really not possible. It might be temporarily possible for some time, but our process of Krishna consciousness is not a process of negation. It is a process of positive attachment. The Mayavadi philosophy goes through this process of neti, 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 right? Not this, not this, not this, not this. I won't do this, I won't do this, I won't do this, I won't do this. They start negating everything that is problematic in this world. So if speech is problematic, I just won't speak. If eating is problematic, I just would stop eating. This is basically how they start reacting. But we've seen Krishna say to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita that this is just simply not possible, right? In the 3rd chapter, Arjuna basically says, I don't want to really act. I want to go to the forest and just be inactive. And Krishna says it's just not possible. It's not the nature of the soul to be inactive at all. You can try to be there for some time, but he says somebody who's trying to be that is actually a cheater or a hypocrite, right? And we see that in Srimad Bhagavatam also, that how this difference is completely demonstrated in this beautiful verse. Ayur harati vaipumsan budyan ashtam chayan nasau tasyarte yat chano nita uttama shloka vartaya. It basically says, both by rising and by setting, the sun decreases the duration of life of everyone, right? This is what's happening to everybody in the world, except one who utilizes the time by discussing topics of the all good personality of Godhead. This is the prescription given by Srimad Bhagavatam also, right? We should use our speech in glorifying Krishna rather than speaking about, rather than not speaking at all, like the Prabhupada says here. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati also will talk about this, and then we'll see that probably next week. He takes a different approach on what the urge to speak is. But ultimately, the conclusion by both the acharyas is that in order for us to control the urge to speak, the only way to do it is by using speech to glorify Krishna. And this is the verse from Ambarish Maharaj that Srila Prabhupada would quote again and again in his Gita, right? Savai mana Krishna padara vindayo pacham sivaikuntha gunan varnane. So basically this verse gives the different ways in which the senses can be engaged in the service of Krishna. And we see that also that this is the parallel that Rupa Goswami is trying to draw from his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, where this is the 11th verse, I believe, which is the definition of bhakti from Narada Pancharatra, which is Sarvopadi vinirmuktam tatparatvena nirmalam rishikena rishikesha sevanam bhakti ruchyate. That using the senses in the service of the master of the senses, rishikena rishikesha sevanam, and this is bhakti ruchyate, he says. So this is Srila Prabhupada's purport on the urge to speak. So this is a positive process of engaging our speech in glorifying Krishna. And then the next urge that Rupa Goswami says is manasa krodha vegam. Actually, it's manasa and krodha vegam separately, but Srila Prabhupada kind of combines both manasa and krodha vegam, because it's very closely associated, right? Srila Prabhupada says restlessness or fickleness of the mind, manovega, is controlled when one can fix his mind on the lotus feet of Krishna. And he quotes Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishna Surya Sama Maya Haya Andakar Yaha Krishna Taha Nahi Maya Radhikar. So this is Krishna is like the sun, Krishna Surya Sama, and Maya Haya Andakar. That Maya is like the darkness, right? And wherever there is sun, there can never be darkness. So wherever there is Krishna, there can never be Maya. So when our mind tries to focus on other things that are not really Krishna conscious, Prabhupada quotes this verse to say that we have to start thinking about Krishna. Use the mind to start thinking about Krishna. Because again, the yogic process of negating everything, that I don't want to think about anything, right? I just want to be, meditate on a white light or something like that. The mind will not remain vacuum for a very long time. It's just not possible. And it's a very, very difficult thing to do also. So just naturally, when we are thinking about Krishna, and it's a gradual process also, right? It starts from the name, and the name slowly develops into the form. The form slowly develops into the activities and pastimes. And by doing that, uh, the mind is automatically controlled. It is not really agitated so much. The agitation is because of Maya entering in our mind. That's basically Prabhupada's point here. Maya essentially means everything that we do for ourselves, right? For our own sense gratification, which is not really good for us. But when such thoughts starts appearing, we start thinking about Krishna and how we can use our mind in Krishna service. And Krodha Vegam, Prabhupada says something that's very interesting. He says, we cannot altogether stop anger. So you cannot really stop anger, Prabhupada says. But he says, we can use our anger in the service of the Lord. And he gives the example of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, right? We all know in the life of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he embodied the verse Trinadapi Sunichena Dharorapi Sekshana Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadhari. He was so humble in his dealings with other people. And we see that in the case of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya or Keshava Kashmiri or all the Mayavadi sannyasis that he interacted with. He sat with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya for 7 days, not uttering a single word. Think about the patience and humility that you might need for somebody who is the supreme personality of Godhead, who actually knows everything, right? So this was Mahaprabhu's behavior throughout his life that he demonstrated. And yet, when Jagai and Madai hurt Nityananda Prabhu and Haridas Thakur, right, he really did not maintain his humility. And he was so angry that he called for his Sudarshan Chakra to take their lives away. And it was because of Nityananda Prabhu's mercy that they were saved. But the point that Prabhupada is making is we can use our anger not for our own personal issues, but instead when devotees are getting blasphemed, in such situations, it might be appropriate to use our anger. And of course, Rupa Goswami gives 3 prescriptions for when a Vaishnava is blasphemed, right? One is you basically cut the tongue of the person who blasphemes a Vaishnava. If you're not able to really do that, you should basically leave your body. And if you're not able to do both, get away from that place, basically, right? Because it's the first offense to the holy name also, to blaspheme the devotees who dedicated their life. So it's a very, very, very offensive thing to do. And Prabhupada talks about Arjuna and Hanuman also, of how Arjuna channeled his anger in the battle of Kurukshetra in the service of Krishna, and how Hanumanji also used his anger in completely lighting up Lanka with fire, right? The first time he went, and also in the battle. So these are ways in which we can channel our anger in the service of Krishna, but it is a very, very difficult thing to do. Most of the time, it doesn't really benefit the other person. And we can see that Prabhupada was so wonderful at doing this. Prabhupada, when he chastised his disciples, the disciples would become so small, right? We've seen all these accounts of the disciples of Prabhupada saying this, and yet somehow they remember it so fondly. Like when we think about somebody who is so angry at us and chastising us, it's not really a fond memory. But when Srila Prabhupada did it, and when his disciples think about it, it somehow brings a fond memory, because this was Srila Prabhupada's purpose of his anger, was that he wanted to really, he did it for the welfare of the other person, which is the most difficult thing to do, to really channel anger, not for ourselves, but for the benefit of other person. So usually it's better not to do this unless we really know how to channel our anger. Okay, and the next couple of verses again Prabhupada combines, and these are also very, very closely related, is the Jihva Vegam and Udara Vegam. which is the urges of the tongue and the urges of the belly, right? Prabhupada says, as for the urges of the tongue, we all experience that the tongue wants to eat palatable dishes. Generally, we should not allow the tongue to eat according to its choice, but should control the tongue by supplying prasad. And we see this is happening in this world, right? We have so many, especially where I live in Texas, we have so many restaurants. It's unbelievable. In a single street, you might have like 10, 15 restaurants, the different types of cuisines that there are. And practically speaking, the urge of the tongue is very, very difficult to satisfy. And we will see later in the purport, Prabhupada quoting Sharira Vidyajal, of how Bhaktivinoda Thakur's song says that the most uncontrollable and voracious of all the senses is the tongue, right? And the urge of the tongue is basically to eat anything that's palatable. And palatable is a word that's very relative, right? Something people in China might think bugs in raw meat is palatable. People somewhere might think something else is palatable, right? So this is the idea that we eat anything and everything that we want. And this causes problems to the belly also, right? It's a very natural thing that anything that you eat causes problems with the belly. And the way to control this is not to just stop eating, right? This is what the Mayavadis try to do. That, okay, eating is problematic, so I will just restrain myself from eating. No, the idea is to eat, but eat only Krishna Prasad. Eat food that is offered to Krishna, right? This way we can control the tongue. So any way in which we can try to serve our senses by engaging it, by serving the master of the senses, by serving Krishna, Rishikena Rishikesha, the result is twofold, right? That's the first part of for the verse. Sarva Upadi Vinirmuktam and Tat Paratvena Nirmalam. Two things start to happen when we engage our senses in the service of Krishna, is that all our upadis or all our designations start going away. These designations that are born out of the body. And the second effect is that Tat Paratvena Nirmalam. All our senses start getting purified, right? So therefore, when we start taking prasadam, we start controlling this urge of the tongue, and basically we start tasting something that's very high, that's higher, that nothing can taste, like nothing like that can taste in this material world, because it's spiritual. That's Krishna Prasad. And Prabhupada also goes on to say that one should take prasadam at scheduled times. This is also a good regulation, right? And that way Krishna is also served in scheduled times. It's not that we offer bhoga to Krishna at any time that we want, but this kind of gives a schedule in our life. And one should not eat in restaurants or sweetmeat shops simply to satisfy the whims of tongue or belly, right? By not eating outside. And if you stick to this principle, Prabhupada says the urges of the belly and tongue can be controlled. The principle is just eating only prasad. So Prabhupada combines both Jihva Vegam and Udara Vegam. And to conclude, the last Vega that Srila Prabhupada talks about in general is the urges of the genitals. Srila Prabhupada says, the Krishna conscious movement encourages marriage not for the satisfaction of the genitals, but for the begetting of Krishna conscious children. As soon as children are little grown up, they are sent to our Gurukula school, where they are trained to become fully Krishna conscious devotees. Many such Krishna conscious children are required, and one who is capable of bringing forth Krishna conscious offspring is allowed to utilize his genitals. Right? We see the extreme opposite happening in the times that we live in, that the entire world is revolving around this principle of satisfying the urges of the genitals. We can go to any extremes to do it. We have a separate place that we have created in America called Las Vegas, where you can practically go and break every single principle that you want in a single place, basically. But that's not the way to do it. Again, we are not completely rejecting the urges of the genitals, but it should be used to beget Krishna conscious children. That is the idea. Or else there is no purpose with procreation. The idea is Varna Shankaras are created, right? This is what Arjuna's argument in Bhagavad Gita also is, that if procreation doesn't happen according to religious principles, then we get unwanted population in the society, and we see what the effects of unwanted population in the society can be. So the ideal way to use is to use it in the service of Krishna, to beget Krishna conscious children. And then Prabhupada adds that these children in the Krishna consciousness movement should be trained in our Gurukula, right? So that they can become Krishna conscious devotees. And this is the famous verse. I forgot the verse, but you should not become parents unless you're able to guide your children towards Krishna consciousness, right? This is, I think, Chanakya Pandit, if I remember right. So this is Srila Prabhupada's general prescription on the different urges that Rupa Goswami speaks. And then after this, in the second half, Prabhupada talks about the Anuvritti purports of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, which I think Maharaj can talk about in the next week, which deals about very, very different things, different ways in which Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati sees these 6 urges and their combinations. So we'll stop here, and then if there are any questions or comments, we can probably take them. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. You have really expanded very nice explanation of the text 1 of the Nectar of Instruction. With PowerPoint, show it more clarity, and it gives more sort of a visualization what you're speaking about, and it really helps us to get the point across. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Now I will request Amit Prabhu to take some questions from the devotees if they have any, or any realization they want to share, their reflections. Hare Krishna. Amit Prabhu, to you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you very much for the wonderful class and session. Yes, initially when you said it will be an intense one. Yes, it is really intense one, and it will it will require broader mind of way to understand all these topics. It is, I know that this is a little bit simpler, but it looks like an intense one. So thank you very much for letting us know about this 7 verses. Sorry, first verse. So probably we have a few questions. If you have some time, can you take up?
Yes, definitely. I'll try my best. Hari Lila Prabhu is here. He can help me also.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, Hare Krishna Prabhuji and Mataji, if you have any questions, please raise your hand. I can unmute yourself, and then we will go ahead with that. So far, we have a question from Mihika. Mihika, please go ahead and ask your question.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Thank you very much for the nice class, Prabhuji. So I learned a lot of new things. Prabhuji, I have 4 questions. So can I ask all of them, Prabhu? So my first question is that if we accidentally perform an act which is inappropriate and that we didn't mean to, but we accidentally did, and if we chant Hare Krishna or do some pious activity, is that still considered atonement? Is that still okay?
Prabhuji, your voice is not coming. No, still we cannot hear you. No, Prabhuji, no, we cannot hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, it come now. It come now.
Okay.
Yeah.
The actual atonement is to become Krishna conscious, right? Perform devotional service. That's the actual atonement, to remove our tendencies or the desires for sense gratification. That's true. But if it's accidental, of course, it's fine. But the idea is we should not commit sinful activities thinking Harinam will actually take it away, right? That's basically the 7th offense. To commit sinful activities on the strength of chanting the holy names. Okay, I can go ahead and commit the sinful activities and then chant a few rounds, and then it'll take away the sinful activities. That is highly discouraged. We should not really do that. But like we have had these conditioning over many lifetimes, and when we're in the process of performing bhakti, those samskaras can make us act in ways that we really don't want to, as long as it's perfectly accidental, right? It's fine. This is what Srila Prabhupada writes in
your voice is again not coming properly. We cannot hear you.
Hey Krishna Prabhuji, might be it's an internet problem, so you can off your video. Might be it work, Prabhu.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, Prabhuji. Yes, we can hear you perfectly.
Okay, so I don't know where I was, but I was quoting Apichet Suduracharu. This was from Bhagavad Gita. And this basically Krishna says, even if somebody who commits abominable activities should still be considered a sadhu, sadhu reva samantavya, samyak vivastitosa. Because in the next verse he says, as long as he continues practicing devotional service, he'll immediately come back to his platform. And Prabhupada writes in the purport that just because Krishna is saying this, it is not a license for us to go and commit sinful activities and then we keep performing bhakti. No, as long as it's an accidental fall down and we continue performing bhakti, it's fine. Is that okay?
Yes, Prabhuji, thank you very much. Prabhuji, my next question is not that like good, but Prabhu, like you said that some people react differently to the problems in this world, like they stop talking or they stop eating. So like my question is that are they actually able to survive and fulfill that, or do they just do it for a few days and give it up?
Yeah, that's basically what it is, right? They try it for a few days and they give it up. So if you look at people who go on a diet, right, as long as it's something that is sustainable, most of the time the people who go on complete fasts, probably after the fast is done, double up their desire to eat. So this is basically Rupa Goswami's point, is that just negation won't help with the problem, because it still doesn't tackle the root cause of the issue, right? The root cause of the issue is still the desire to eat a lot. Just by fasting, how will the desire go away, right? We should somehow dovetail that desire. Instead of eating for myself, we start offering that prasadam, offering the food to Krishna and honoring it as prasadam. And slowly, gradually, by this process, our tendency to eat for ourselves will start changing into what does Krishna want, right? And we can see this in the case of the Goswamis, that in such an advanced stage, they would even stop eating for 3 days because it would interfere with their services, not because they wanted to stop eating. They were so engaged and so blissful in their service to Krishna that they thought this was a hindrance. So basically, you rasovargam rasopyasya, right? You basically switch a lower taste with a higher taste. That's the idea. Because just negating the lower taste still does not take out the root cause of the problem.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, my last question basically is that like I'm in America, so then our schools are not like, they have no Krishna consciousness. So then like you said that when like they go to Guru school and become like devotees, so then we don't get like that like good association like in school, but then like we go to temple and get the association. So Prabhuji, like should we like just go on with the pace, or should we do anything extra?
Yeah, for this, we actually need to know what association really means, right? Which Rupa Goswami will talk about in text 4. Dadati pratigrihnati guhyamakyati pruchiti bhumte bojayate cheva shadvidam priti lakshanam. These are the 6 ways in which you associate with people. by giving and taking gifts, by offering prasadam and honoring prasadam together, and by revealing your mind in confidence and asking confidence questions from them. So these are the 6 ways which actually association works. So it doesn't matter that even devotees who are not in the age category of going to school go to offices, right? It's not that we have to be separate from the world, but that's not the association that what we're talking about. Although we might be in different circumstances in our life, we might not be going to a gurukula traditionally, but still we can take the association after coming back from school and try to avoid associating in these 6 ways with those who are not Krishna conscious. That's the idea, right? It'll get more clearer as we move through Nectar of Instruction, because texts 4, 5, and 6 completely talk about how association and how to associate with different kinds of people.
Okay, Prabhuji. Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mihika. Manani Mataji, can you please unmute yourself and ask a question?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Danvat Pranam, all glories to Guru and Gauranga.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, very nice class and very nice explanation.
Thank you.
Mataji, you went on mute.
So it is a good fortune, Prabhu, that we are able to hear from Vaishnavas like you. I have a very small, quick question. When you were explaining about Vacho Vega, so sometime because of the nature of our occupation, we might have to talk a lot because of the occupation. Teachers are there, and there are people who work in office environments and things like that. How we should be cognizant of the fact, how should we put that principle, that Vacho Vega, like into our day-to-day life, when to control, how to control, like how should we apply it in our daily life?
Yeah, this is also something Rupa Goswami is going to talk about in the 2nd verse, where he'll talk about atyahara and prayasa, over collecting and over endeavoring. So we have to figure out on how we are using our speech. Is it really, are we going above board so that it completely occupies most of our time and we're not really able to spend any time for Krishna consciousness, or are we doing it in the right proportion? Because we're still in the world, we still have to interact, and based on our different jobs, like you said, teachers or even call center people, they still have to interact with people. That's not the kind of urge to speak that Rupa Goswami is saying. That's completely job related and your karma, right? This is your duty that you have to perform. But the urge to speak is, again, something to gratify your senses. That's kind of how it starts, right? And what you speak can actually start influencing your other senses in terms of whether your speech is the mode of goodness or passion or in the mode of ignorance. So that's the kind of speech, right? Idle talk and gossip and things like that we can definitely avoid that as much as possible, and spend that time reading about Krishna, talking about Krishna. Ultimately, this is the yardstick to measure, right? This is Krishna's description. He says, Machitta madgata prana bodhayanta parasparam katayanta shamam nityam tushyanti cha ramanti cha. That Machitta madgata prana, my devotees who are always thinking of me and who's always dependent on me, what do they do when they come together? Bodhayanta parasparam, they are enlightening oneself, each other, and katayantasya mamnityam, about my different glories, and then tushyanti, they derive unbelievable pleasure by doing this. So when we as devotees come together, what are we speaking about? That's something that we can start with, at least, right? In the circle of devotees, at least, we can try to use our speech by glorifying Krishna as much as possible. And then it will slowly expand outside.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Mataji.
Prabhuji, do we have a few more minutes? Mihika has one more question.
Okay.
Mihika, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, I have one more question. That it's understood that we have to control our tongue by giving prasadam, but then like especially like chocolate and all the good stuff, we just buy it, the wish items from outside or make it, and then offer it to Krishna and eat it. So then that's basically not controlling our tongue or belly. So what should we do? Like just get rid of all the stuff, or like what should we do? What's the best advice to do?
Yeah. So this is what Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur will also say in his Anuvriti purports. He'll go as far, like Prabhupada is saying, you should at least offer everything and honor only prasadam. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati will go as far as to say, if you're eating prasadam, not because you wanted it to make for Krishna, but you want it for yourself, that is also Vacho Vegam. Sorry, Jihva Vegam, he'll say, the urge of the tongue. But we have to start from somewhere, right? The starting place is to offer everything to Krishna and then honor it as prasadam. And slowly, what this will do, this will start purifying us. And gradually we'll come to a point where we're not making prasadam for ourselves and honoring it to Krishna, but trying to see what Krishna might want and then honoring it to Krishna and then having it. The wonderful example that we can see is that of Madhavendra Puri, right? When you get so advanced, Madhavendra Puri was a renunciate monk, right? But he wouldn't even go and ask for food or prasadam from grihasthas. They are allowed to beg for food, right? But Madhavendra Puri thought that even that is not proper. He would just sit in a place and he would say, if Krishna wants me to have prasadam today, somebody will come and give me prasadam. And if he didn't get any prasadam for the day, he would just fast for the day. But that's somebody who is very, very advanced. But for us to get to that point, it should not be very artificial. We have to we have to realize where we are and then slowly proceed from that point. But if we follow the process of bhakti, we will definitely get to the point where it is anya bilashita shunyam dhyana karmadhyanavutam anukulyena krishnanushilanam, right? That we are doing it only for the pleasure of Krishna. We will definitely get to that point, but it is a gradual process.
Okay, Prabhuji. Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, Hare Krishna.
Anjali Anita Mataji, can you please unmute yourself and ask your question?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandat Pranam. Thank you so much for such a wonderful introduction and explanation of the first verse. I have a question. You said that like shloka number 2, 3, 4 is in the Anupchup Chanda, and then 9 and 10 in Shardula Vikriditam. So where do we get these meters? Is there a particular website?
I'm sure there must be specific websites, and Harilila Prabhu is a Sanskrit scholar, so he might be able to guide us better on this. But where I was referring from is His Holiness Hanumat Preshik Maharaj has written a book, his afterwards to the Nectar of Instruction, called Tava Pache Pache. Mm-hmm. And there is a section in the book that talks about the various meters from NOI. But Harilila Prabhu, do you know of any resources that Mataji can use?
Well, unless we get a Sanskrit grammar book from somewhere, yeah. I mean, I'm sure in India they have. Then some of them they explain the composition of meter, like how many letters in a line and where to stop. And there's so many. I think they have to go by Lagu Guru. Means you have to know short and long word, and accordingly you mark it. And then there is a process. Whole process is given, which we learn in the Sanskrit grammar. Actually, Mm-hmm. So I don't know whether there is a ready-made link available for that or not, but I would recommend that if you type in Google any of the meter, for example, Anustup, Sardul Vikridi, Amanda Kranta, then you may be able to get related things, and you might be able to find something. That is my guess. You can do that, Mm-hmm. Is that okay, Mataji?
Yeah, okay.
One other thing I remember is Radhika Raman Prabhu gave a seminar in ISKCON of Silicon Valley a couple of years back or 3 years back on Sanskrit for scriptural reading or something like that. So if you search YouTube, you might get that. And I remember him going through the different meters and how you can identify those different meters in one of the seminars in a very brief way.
Do you have it handy, Prabhuji? Or is it we have to search it?
No, I have to search it, but I can search it and text you the link.
That would be
Yeah,
great.
that would be good.
You can pass it on
So
to
everybody get benefit of it. Yes, Prabhuji.
Yes. I'll do that after the class. After we
Thank
finish.
you so much. Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Thank you, Mataji.
Dandat pranam. Radhe Radhe.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Is anybody has any other question or realization? Prabhuji, I think that all are good with the explanation which you have given today and with the nectarine class. So if you and Prabhu advise, we can wind up the call.
Yes, I
Yes,
think.
Prabhuji. Yeah.
Thank you so much for engaging me in this service.
Thank you again, Prabhuji. Thank you again.
Wonderful class, Prabhuji. Thank you very much, Prabhuji. And Prabhuji, we are requesting you that I know that there is a schedule for nectar of instruction class between you and Maharaj. So we will like expecting that you will come and give us the same nectar of instructions going forward also.
Yeah, thank you.
Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai. His Grace Srinath Prabhuji ki jai.
Jai. Hari Bol.
Hari Bol. Wonderful.
Hare Krishna.